Penn State recruiting is rolling, but how did the Nittany Lions do it? Was it NIL? Was it the staff? Was it a combination? All that and more coming up here on the Portal Podcast.
Locked On presents The Portal, the daily podcast covering college football recruiting and everything NIL. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Welcome back into the Portal Podcast, where you get your daily recruiting, NIL, and transfer portal news. I'm your host, Brian Smith, longtime recruiting analyst and writer. Thank you for making the Portal Podcast your first listen each and every day. And today's show is brought to you by our friends at Game Time. Right now, you can download the Game Time app, create an account, and get $20 off your first purchase with Game Time. Penn State, they secure the commitment of a big-time 27 player. They also keep some guys in the fold from 26, add another player. They've done a lot of things, and we're going to talk about their NIL, maybe a little transfer portal stuff. And to get all of that accomplished, we're going to bring in our guy here, Zach Seyko, Locked On Nittany Lions. How you doing, Zach?
Hey, it was a great recruiting weekend, right? I think that speaks for itself, because you not only get a potential 5-star wide receiver in 2027, and I know we're going out well into the future, but to secure not one, but two recruitments, you have them locked in. Kemon Spell in 27 and Messiah Mickens in 26, when J1 Sider was working hard to flip them to Notre Dame. All across the board, right. Fantastic, phenomenal weekend for Penn State recruiting.
Absolutely. So let's just jump into that. Why do you think it happened? And is it something that I don't know about, or is this probably, relationships are always first, but what else contributed to Penn State securing the commitments of both Mickens and Spell?
A lot. There's a lot of layers to this. So Penn State, James Franklin is the constant here, is that James Franklin's locked in and that he's there. He's not leaving anytime soon. For some people, that's bad news, but that's the reason why a lot of these commitments don't just flip when an assistant coach happens to leave. And J1 Sider built a strong relationship with Messiah Mickens. You could tell that he was at least, questioning, okay, do I even stay with the Nittany Lions? But it was James Franklin who made the decision to hire Stan Drayton. I could have gone with somebody else, but he knew that with Stan Drayton available since being fired from Temple, that if he's willing to accept this job, this is our best possible replacement candidate for Sider. They get him. And then Stan Drayton wastes no time making sure that the commits that are already there are locked in. Messiah Mickens has canceled all of his official visits and says that he is 100% committed to Penn State. Same thing with Kemon Spell, who is a top 10 player in the nation for 2027. He is a top 10 player in the country. So to fend off J1 Sider, to fend off Notre Dame, that's a big deal. When he was recruiting them hard, they got scholarship offers. They obviously have the previous relationship, but that wasn't enough to get them to flip. They're staying, and then they're canceling everything. They're locked into Penn State. So it's James Franklin being the constant factor, hiring Stan Drayton getting this over the finish line. And I got to imagine that NIL plays a factor in here. So now I'm not here to disclose any NIL deals or what had happened, because I don't know those details, and obviously we never will. But with revenue sharing, there seems to be a new order of business when it comes to the collective, when it comes to Happy Valley United. But that's the name of the game right now. This is what it is. This is college athletics, Brian. You know this very well. And Happy Valley United was very open and transparent, and to an extent bragging, right? Hey, this is the way we're going to get things done. Okay, well, your collective is cheering on the fact that Kemon Spell and Messiah Mickens are totally locked into Penn State. I'm going to read the writing on the wall that, yeah, NIL certainly played a factor in here, but it's the alignment that they now have, where there's not all these different competing interests, where James Franklin, Pat Kraft, and the NIL department are all on the same page. And that is massive if you want to keep up with Ohio State, if you want to make sure that Michigan doesn't come from behind, if you want to go toe-to-toe with Oregon, this is how it has to be done. So overall, there are a lot of positive takeaways here for Penn State, more than just, hey, you got a few commitments and recruitments to shut down.
I would agree with that. It's not the friendliest way to look at it, but you got to spend some money no matter who you are. Because even if the kid wants to go to your school, at some point the gap is so wide, it's hard not to make that business decision. And every family and circumstance is different too. But I thought the same. So let me ask you this. Do you think that Penn State is making the same kind of recruiting efforts in general, like the staff? I know Sider's gone, but like the staff, I think is pretty good overall in terms of building relationships for the Nittany Lions. So the pitch in general, pretty much the same. Am I following this right? It's just the NIL portion we're projecting here has increased for Penn State in some capacity. Mm-hmm. And then you adjust. I mean, they got another good running back coach, et cetera. So it's Penn State. You should expect that. What do you think Penn State needs to do to take that next step as a recruitment situation unfolds? With that D-tackle is the spot where money really flows. Do you think they would dig deep on that, or is that to be determined?
I mean, there's always room to, I've been saying this a lot frequently with whatever Penn State sport I'm talking about. There's always room to better your best, but I don't know what Penn State can take incremental steps forward and just say, like I said, they're bettering their best. But we're talking about alignment. We're talking about all the things that Penn State didn't have since NIL had started. The whole success with honor and, well, we have to do it the right way. Well, Penn State's kind of accepted that college athletics is what it is. And so, yeah, should they try and go land other top prospects? I mean, Kemon Spell's a top 10 player in the nation. He's the number 1 overall running back, and you got him to shut down his recruitment as a class of 2027 guy. You just got a commitment when wide receiver has been as abysmal as it possibly could be. It's been the laughing stock of college football. It's a joke. It's a meme. Not from me, from everybody else that watches this sport. Penn State wide receiver has been the butt of the joke. And you go get a potential 5-star in the same weekend for the class of 2027. What more could you want from Penn State football recruiting right now? What more could you ask for? Sure, you could always, well, let's go get the 5-star QB. Let's go get a 5-star defensive tackle and add that. It's not impossible. It's also not necessarily exactly realistic, but I won't complain with the fact that you have potentially 2 5-star players in 2027. You have another tackle who's a 4-star in Von Brandt, Leighton Von Brandt, who could potentially be a 5-star. He's already a high-end 4-star, so 2027 is already off to a great start. And 2026 is a top 10 recruiting class. So yes, you would like to see Penn State. Well, top 10, that's not good enough. You got to finish top 3, try to finish number 1 overall. I think they're still moving in the right direction. There's just not a lot to complain about at this point, but I get what you're saying that, yeah, there's still other things that they need to try and fix, of course, but you could say the same thing about Oregon. You could say the same thing about Ohio State. There's just really not much to complain about, especially with this weekend.
I tend to agree. Penn State, to me, to get over the hump, it's still D-line. Just getting that 5-star. Like, there's only a few schools that typically spend crazy for that. Like $1 million won't even get you a 5-star D-lineman. Penn State, I don't think, wants to go down that road. So that's the conundrum.
Maybe they're all in on the revenue sharing that Pat Kraft is willing to spend. Right. You are willing to take $20.5 million, right? You're not obligated to spend $20.5 million. You just have that. That's the cap. So other schools are going to spend maybe $10 million in revenue sharing, but that's where Pat Kraft and Penn State already decided we are spending the absolute maximum amount that we can with the cap limit. Whereas other schools are like, well, maybe we'll spend 10, 12, 15 right out of the gate. Penn State's saying if we want to be a national title contender, we are maximizing the revenue sharing in addition to getting the collective in the right spot.
Well, this is a fascinating conversation. We're going to continue on the other side here. When we come back, a little more NIL. We're going to get into some transfer portal, what Penn State needs. And also, this is something that I think Zach and I will probably agree on. The spring window for the portal may need to go away. If all these schools are so scared to have a spring game that they don't want anybody to see because they're afraid of getting players poached, that's something we got to talk about too here on the portal. Ever check your bank account and wonder where did all my money go? Between dining out, online shopping, and entertainment, it's easy to lose track. That's where Monarch Money comes in, your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't a budgeting app, it's a complete financial command center. You can track your accounts, investments, and spending in one place, so you stop just managing your money and start building wealth. If you look at it from a broad perspective, you finalize all the different things that you do in a month. You probably miss out on what you spend on food delivery and all the little things that add up. And with Monarch Money, you can manage everything that you have in one place with your partner to set goals and become financially secure a lot easier. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONCollege at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONCollege for half off of your first year. We are also presented by Game Time. Imagine watching your favorite team, feeling the energy of the crowd, and witnessing unforgettable moments. There's nothing like experiencing big games in person. Getting tickets shouldn't be stressful either, and that's where Game Time comes in, making it easier than ever to grab last-minute tickets for seats all over the place and get unbelievable prices. Game Time picks, this is the best part about it, curation makes it easier to find value for your tickets, whether it's a comedy show, sporting event, like a football game or basketball game, theater, whatever it is, Game Time picks will help you. And my favorite part about Game Time, you can have the seat view. Right from your phone, you can view the ticket that you select right there and see the pitcher's mound, the stage, or anything else. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Locked On College for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last-minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Zach, Penn State got a pretty good class going. Mostly local kids. It's more of a traditional class, 2026 right now, which is kind of normal for early on. Do you think they'll go a little more national, kind of like they did last year, especially with Sider gone? Or do you think it'll be a little more close to home? I'm just curious in general.
They start local and then they branch out. So J1 Sider having that Florida connection, and it wasn't – J1 Sider has connections in Florida, but that gets you one, maybe two prospects, okay? So it's not like Florida became this pipeline to Penn State. You'd get selective prospects that would have been really good for Penn State, but it's not the end-all, be-all. Penn State is refocusing, and we've talked about this. They're going to go after more of New Jersey, the eastern side of Pennsylvania, Philadelphia area. So that's where they're really targeting is Philadelphia, New Jersey area. You have Jim Knowles now in the fold, St. Joe's prep grad, so he's not going to do a lot of heavy lifting in the recruiting, but Deion Barnes is also a Philadelphia native as well, defensive line coach. So that's where Penn State's really refocusing. Pittsburgh's been the pipeline. You just pick Kemon Spell, Pittsburgh area. Khalil Taylor, that potential 5-star wide receiver, Pittsburgh area, right? David Davis, who just recently committed. We haven't brought him up yet. 4-star athlete, probably most likely projects as a safety or a cornerback, Pittsburgh area. So Penn State can start in Pennsylvania and then branch out to New Jersey, go to Maryland, Virginia. They've recruited in Delaware. That's where Jasir Rogers is from in the class of 2026. Leighton Von Brandt as well is from Delaware too. So Penn State, but they've shown that, hey, Troy Hune's in the state of California. They're not afraid to recruit there. Darius Dixon in the class of 2025, in early enrollee on campus, is from Mater Dei. So I think where that connection, it almost seems like they threw a dart on a map and hit California as the replacement for Florida. Because why California? There really aren't necessarily direct connections there. It's just such a big state. It's loaded with talent. If Penn State had chosen Texas, for example, I'd be making the same argument that it's so full of talent that you can't go wrong with it. You're going to get a prospect, maybe two, maybe three. That's your home run right there. So you can't go wrong with any of the states that just produce this influx of talent.
I think there's a lot of truth in that. I'll be curious to see if they hit the Carolinas, Atlanta. I think It's a little easier because there's a lot of New Jersey, PA, Maryland people that move down to that area. Mm-hmm. So there's a little more familiarity with Penn State and Big Ten football. My next question, though, is with the NIL change and everything, let's get into the portal overall. Do you think, since they're obviously spending some money, they'll make a splash with anybody? I'd pick a position overall. Anything from the spring window with Penn State, or are they going to just be selective?
I think you have to if you want to continue off this status. Look, I think it's championship or bust. You don't get a 4-year quarterback within the program, 3-year starter. That rarely happens at this point anymore. With transfer portal, NIL, Drew Aller's been here for 4 years. You have to maximize it. You get one more opportunity with him. Best offensive line in the James Franklin tenure. We keep saying that, but the offensive line keeps getting better. This is a top 3 group. Singleton and Allen are both back. Deny Dennis Sutton, Zane Duran on defense, Zach Hugh Wheatley, the emergence of guys like a Tony Rojas and AJ Harris. This is a championship contending team. So if you think you are, you go and spend. Because Penn State has seen Ohio State spent as much NIL money as they possibly could. Michigan, Look, I know all of the Connor Stallion stuff, but they won a national title, and they did it by retaining a lot of their talent. So Penn State has done that, where they've retained a bulk of their talent. Ohio State did the same thing, and then got some complementary pieces in the portal. They don't need a quarterback, so you got to go wide receiver. You got to go defensive tackle. I think they need wide receiver depth. I think they need another a solid starter at defensive tackle. Zane Durant, and you hope you get Alonzo Ford back. That's a nice 1-2 punch. You and I have discussed that already. That could be one of the better tandems in the Big Ten at defensive tackle. But it doesn't hurt, because Penn State rotated 4 or 5 guys a season ago. You need 3. You need at least 3. And then you hope you get one of the younger defensive tackles that have potential, but that they emerge, whether that's a Liam Andrews or a Xavier Gilliam. So then there's not that much pressure on that guy to step up in that 3 spot. I think you need essentially 3 co-starters, a 4th guy that you can rely on, and then let the young talent develop, so that you don't have to push them off the cliff and expect them to fly.
I think they could use 2 guys on the inside, but both don't have to be Herculean. You could get some kid from Yale.
Starter. They need a starter level.
Yeah, they need somebody that it's at least competent, and they also, they need another guy who can push the pile too. It doesn't have to be Zane, but he's got to be somebody that there's no nice way to say it. There's 4 or 5 teams on your schedule every year that are a little different than the others. That guy, if he had to start, like if Zane had a sore ankle, could only go 15 snaps, that is your concern. Yeah. Because the drop off right now, it sounds like to me from what you're saying, D tackle, if there's an injury bug, they're in a lot of trouble against elite teams. Most teams, I still don't think it'd matter, but against Oregon and Ohio State in particular, that probably doesn't go well.
Indiana, I mean, even, right?
Possibly, yeah, because they're going to score. I mean, they're going to dial it up. But most of the teams, Penn State's talented enough, they'll just keep away and run the ball on you, and they'll probably hide their defense to a degree. But in the playoff, you're not doing it. You can't win 21-17 in the playoff. It's not how it works. So, yeah, I agree. So I think they need 2 D tackles, but one could just be a guy that gets 10 snaps a game. And maybe
again,
helps you a little bit. Yeah.
And we don't know yet. The spring football season is going to tell Penn State a lot. Again, they were looking in the winter transfer portal window. They were trying to get David Blay, who's at Miami of Florida, and the level that he's at is all conference. So awesome. They were trying to go. Yeah, really good player. So they were trying to go get an all conference caliber player at defensive tackle to even rotate in. Again, they have Zane Durant and Alonzo Ford, but what happens if one of them goes down or Ford doesn't return to 100%? You need some insurance, especially when you can win a title this season. Everything resets. New quarterback, new running backs, a bulk of your defense could go off to the NFL. Penn State's never been a bulk of your offensive line. Penn State's never been in a better position, I think, to go after a championship, even compared to last season under a James Franklin tenure. Maybe you could argue the 2017 team that ultimately missed the playoff, but hey, they were really good. That's on paper, hypothetically speaking, of course. But Penn State has better offensive line, veteran quarterback, veteran running backs, etc. They need depth at defensive tackle and wide receiver. A superstar is obviously nice. Wouldn't complain, but let's be realistic. I think we're also going to see a lot since revenue sharing. This has been an interesting point that's been brought up elsewhere, that revenue sharing kicks in this summer, that the spring transfer portal window is going to be absolutely nuts. It is going to be crazy. There's going to be so much back channeling. Guys you would never expect to enter the transfer portal you're going to see so much turnover. Probably maybe the biggest transfer portal cycle that we've seen in the past, give or take 4 or 5 years, this cycle, this time around.
I think it will be, but in a little different way than what people imagine. It won't be volume. It will be the players that go in. Like, I don't know if you follow NCAA basketball, but there are guys that are like players of the year in their conference or the best players on their team that have no reason to leave that are. Why? It's because they may not be NBA. NBA is different than pro football. Like, it's such a small roster.
Cash in?
Yeah, these are guys that it's nothing against their schools. They're leaving, but it's still the same principle. I can go get $500,000 to go play at this school or stay here and get $250,000. They're gone. Yeah. I mean, if I don't want a house payment either if I'm in them. I don't have to, after I'm out of college, but whatever. With that in mind, I want to talk about with Zach why I think the portal window is eventually going to get, but there's some things that I have to say about it. I want Zach's take on it. That is next here on the portal. Get the supplies you need from the site made for the skilled trades, Supply House. Whether into plumbing, HVAC, or electrical work, Supply House is the reliable way to order products online. Their easy-to-use website is packed with helpful resources and the latest product info to help you get the job done right. Plus, with a complete inventory of over 200,000 parts from 400 plus top brands, you'll find exactly what you need delivered fast, coast to coast. Need help with an order? Supply House offers expert support and industry-leading service, so you'll always talk to a real person. And for trade pros looking for an extra edge, their free TradeMaster program offers exclusive perks like a dedicated phone line, free shipping, and discounts on every order. Thousands of skilled professionals are already taking advantage. Now it's your turn. Join the TradeMaster program today at supplyhouse.com/TM and start ordering plumbing, HVAC, and electrical supplies with just a few clicks. Plus, use promo code SH5 for 5% off your first order. That is supplyhouse.com. We are going to see tampering galore in the spring. And to summarize what I meant at the end from what kind of piggybacking off of Zach's conversation, I don't think the volume will be the same because a lot of guys have already transferred, but the guys leaving will surprise you. It will be weird, but it's really not. Sometimes an offer is too good to give up. Like if a kid has, I'm just throwing it out there, some kid from Nevada who was a decent player, if word gets out he had a great spring and he's an offensive tackle, which is a premium position, I mean, the suspects, they're going to offer money. They're going to offer him a lot more than Nevada can. That's why I bring up to you, Zach, how much longer do you think the NCAA is going to keep the spring window open, or do you think that's even consideration? I'll give my take here in a moment.
Does the NCAA do anything right at this point?
Well, that's a good question within itself, by the way. Congrats on that.
I mean, they every time they are placed with a 50-50 decision, they always somehow choose the wrong one. I just whoever the decision and it's tradition. It's the past decade. It's the past 2 decades. The NCAA is always wrong. I have no idea. So whatever they do, it's like following some of those investment shareholder experts, if you will, and they say one stock and it tanks the next week. That's kind of what the NCAA is for trying to manage college athletics. Whatever they pick, the opposite, the worst outcome's going to happen. Because do you notice? The winter transfer portal window happening in the middle of a playoff run, the spring transfer portal window happening in the middle of March Madness, in the middle of a basketball tournament. Are you kidding me? That's outrageous. So if the NCAA has any say, hopefully they can cover their rear ends and change it, because you need a committee. You need a committee because every coach is saying the same thing. It's not like, well, the coaches are split. Some of them like the transfer portal window here. Others don't. No, it is every single person from James Franklin to Matt Rule to Lincoln Riley to anybody that would say, yeah, we need a reset with the college football calendar. And everybody just sits around and does nothing. So I don't know what the NCAA will do, but whatever it is, it's probably going to be a bad decision.
Well, here are some of the reasons that I think that it's an interesting topic. Number one, in the spring, there are certain companies that have allegiances with the big events. The NCAA tournament, obviously, CBS, TNT, TBS, all that stuff. Mm-hmm. So ESPN does it, but ESPN is big with football. Do you think they like that all these spring games are being canceled? Of course not. Because that means a lot of money out of their pocket. And there's not near as much information for them to throw out for all these shows. Like a lot of their shows aren't doing as well anymore. They're getting canceled. Live programming never goes out of style. Like Penn State spring game is going to sell. I don't know if they are, but like a bunch are going away. Florida State, it's at Texas. Some of these big brands.
Who's having them? It's easier to answer who's having them and not who's not.
It's really a problem. And the reason is, from what I am told, at least in theory, is people don't want to show their younger players, especially on a spring game, and it be televised and taped, because then people go through, watch it, and then they contact these players and try to get them. If Texas is worried about it, who's got more money than Lord only knows what, can you imagine what Nevada thinks? Can you imagine what Ball State thinks? It's just a problem. So that's the first thing. Second, if you look at it from that perspective of the coaches and all that, you've got a lot of agents and stuff probably telling their players the wrong thing. I'm just going to throw that out there and leave it at that. Agents, college players, that's iffy. But third, if you look at it for the information for fans, like when I did a podcast recently talking about like Florida State, they have just shut down everything. They don't give anything. It's terrible. The news media is going to get pretty crappy. Like Norvell better win right away this fall or they're going to turn on him because they got nothing to talk about. It's not good for media. And then finally, just kind of looking at it, you're not building your brand if you don't have a spring game. You get your fans in and you get your big boosters in. It's called the bubble. Like you got to get the big boosters to write big checks. You don't have a spring game. That's one less opportunity for that. So it's tough. I guess you could also, it's one less time you can get recruits on campus too. There are so many reasons not having spring games is bad for your program. And I did that little list there in 2 minutes. I thought about it for a couple of days. I'm sure I could add on, make a few phone calls. So I think it's a problem. I don't know what they do though, because they're concerned. And I know there's two sides. There's always pros as well, but some of the coaches that are poaching love it. You know, if you're a school like Oregon or something that can go, like, let's be honest, that we know what's going on. They don't care because they got the money to go do it. Yeah. But most schools do not. I'm curious if this goes away because I think it's going to be a disaster in a few weeks for this. And there's going to be a couple of scandals that go public where coaches call out other like it's going to get ugly. And the NCAA is going to get put in the crosshairs from multiple direct. They're going to be in an absolute no win. But they put themselves in this position in the first place. So I do not care. I'm just throwing it out there. And if I'm wrong, I'll gladly eat my words. Chances of that are about -5 million because there's going to be portal poaching constantly, especially again, offensive tackle, defensive tackle, and quarterback. Mm-hmm. Those spots in particular aren't enough bodies. So the money gets gross. It is what it is. Do you think Penn State, are they having a spring game? Is Penn State or no?
They will have this hybrid event. It's not going to be televised. That's already.
Oh, wow. That's the same thing. They don't want their guys getting taped. 100%.
So when you brought that up, I said, why would they not have this televised? I said, well, but they're changing the format. So because the spring game is supposed to be, it's a glorified practice. That's what it's always been. They've gone away from that traditional A squad versus B squad, or let's pick teams and just have them go up against each other in this simulated scrimmage. It's the first thing that I think of. Well, they want to prevent injuries because people who do have the opportunity to go into the portal, that's your last practice. You're already going to make your decisions by there. Why jeopardize their future if they do have an opportunity outside of Penn State or just long term? You don't want to injure somebody at the end of spring season. They have to use the summer to recover, and then they're not ready for fall camp. So I always thought about health, longevity, injuries of that concern. But yeah, portal poaching is a great alternative reason, and probably the main one. Honestly, injuries aside, when anybody can back channel, contact whomever, and you don't know. I mean, James Franklin and Pat Kraft have said this. People are contacting my players. I get, hey, what would you, or contacting players on behalf, and they get the email saying, hey, what would you pay, or what would happen if this player had entered the portal? Would Penn State be interested? And this has happened so frequently that Pat Kraft, for example, said this he went on the record and said this. He's like, I've received emails about players that are presently at Penn State. Hey, how would Penn State like this current Penn State player? And it's like, dude, what is going on? These agents, they work sleepless nights. They work overtime to try to back channel and do whatever to maximize. And I get it. I guess it's their job. They got to get the best deal at the end of the day. But wholeheartedly agree that the spring game, it's not a necessity. I do not care that they're canceled. I wasn't watching anybody else's spring game to begin with. I'm not hurt that Penn State's going to, basically they're do an event for the fans. Exactly. Have competitions, maybe do a 7-on-7. I'm all for the community aspect of it, but the spring game itself should go away because I don't think it is that important. It's simply for college football purists, tradition. Do a 7-on-7. You maximize NIL. Have players sign things, for fans and everything else. Make it a big tailgating event because then you can sell parking and all this stuff. Penn State's dedicated. You'll get 40,000-50,000 people to show up for a little 7-on-7 flag football tournament. Players sign autographs. There's a band. There's concessions. Make it everything but a football game. You'll get Penn State fans to show up.
I think that's fine, but I guarantee you the reason it's not televised is what we were just talking about. Do you think Penn State doesn't want that TV money? Of course they do. It's because of the poaching. Yeah, that's what sucks. I get it. But this is why I think it'll go away. I'm going to do my own show, just throw it out there, some more specifics. But portal poaching is going to be the name of the show because I think it's a big problem. And if a school like Penn State, who has the resources to keep their players in-house, they proved it, as you mentioned earlier, not one, but both of their future NFL running backs are coming back because they got the money to keep them, then you know it's bad. I mean, for the love of mankind. So, again, if you're Nevada, what are you doing? You know what I mean? There's any school like that that's G5, MAC, you know what I mean?
I would say even some of the lower Power 4 schools.
Because, like, if you're Virginia,
yes,
it's not the same NIL deal. I'm sure they've got NIL, but it's not in the same stratosphere as what Penn State has. It's not the same as what, like, Florida has. So, that's a problem. Zach, tell everybody where they can find your work, my friend.
Same as you on YouTube, wherever you get your podcast. Locked On Nittany Lions, posting daily episodes around any of your favorite Penn State sports teams, more than just football, talking recruiting as well, wrestling, basketball, you name it, all over at Locked On Nittany Lions.
Odyssey, Spotify, Apple, YouTube. You can find Locked On the Portal everywhere. We are recruiting NIL and transfer portal every day. We will see you again soon.